They entered the courtroom not as a family, but adversaries. The air was charged with betrayal, and the reality of years of secrets was ready to erupt before the world. What had begun in love and unity had become a fight for survival, and there would be only one voice to alter everything. If you think you know the Sister Wives saga, guess again, because nothing in this courtroom is off limits. Tune in until the end, because the question you'll be left wondering might just change how you perceive them for life. The courtroom doors groaned open, and first to enter was Christine, her heels clicking on the frigid marble floor, her jaw clenched, her eyes blazing with both fury and resolve. Behind her came Janelle, quieter but persistent, her weight oppressive with a quiet kind of strength. Meri waited for a moment, holding tightly to her bag as if to it were armor, caught between loyalty and fear, and Robyn brought up the rear, her head lowered as if burdened by her secrets. And then entered Kody, walking in with the same swagger, his hair drawn back tight, his face set in defiance, but his eyes glinting with nervousness. The murmurs in the gallery erupted at once. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What would be discovered today? Judge Peterson's gavel came crashing down, resonating like thunder in the room. Court is in session. His tone was infused with the bearing of a man who had watched decades of deceptions undone in these very rooms. The case was straightforward on paper. Money mishandled, custody battles, charges of betrayal, but everyone knew that this was about something more: power, control, and old wounds that still had not scabbed over. Christine's attorney, a keen-eyed woman named Anderson, hovered with documents piled so high they could be overheard tipping. On the opposite side of the aisle, Kody's defense team sat rigid, whispering tactics as Robyn's shaking fingers wrung a tissue into shreds. Christine testified first. Christine testified first. Her pale but determined face rose from its seat as she walked to the stand. "For years, I gave up," she started, her voice breaking under the strain of recollections. "I sacrificed my life for this family, for a man who swore equality, love, and justice. And what I received in return was neglect, manipulation, and betrayal." The courtroom hummed. Each word carried weight, commanding the attention of even the most skeptical members present. Kody's face reddened with rage, his jaw clenching as he remained seated, his lawyer whispering him to remain calm. Christine rested her elbows on the ledge of the witness stand, her fingers curled around it. "This is not about money. This is not about money. This is not even about custody. This is about truth, and at last, being free of the lies." And just when you believe the tempest has passed, the true thunder is still in store to strike. Robyn's eyes brimmed as Christine talked, and she mouthed something to herself at one point, as if an apology, though no one could overhear. Janelle leaned forward, her hands crossed tightly, her face unreadable but her silence shouting everything. Meri stared down at her lap, her shoulders rigid, as if every sentence Christine uttered sliced through her. Cross-examination followed. Kody's attorney paced slowly, standing, his voice low but cutting like a blade. "Mrs. Brown, you say neglect, but didn't you gain financially all these years under this setup? Didn't you wait until the money started to get low before speaking up?" The words were cruel, designed to undercut her, but Christine did not blink. She stared back at him with an icy gaze. "Yes, I stayed. Because I was trained to think that's what love was. Because I was scared. And because I was lied to, again and again. But that stops today. The longer you linger, the more the secrets untangle, and trust me, you'll want to know what follows." The judge observed closely, observing the tension mounting like a thunderhead. All members of the gallery leaned in. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed in the hallway beyond, and yet inside, the air was thick with silence after every explosive word. Kody shifted uncomfortably, his jaw twitching, his fingers drumming the table as though holding back an eruption. Finally, unable to resist, he shot up from his seat, shouting across the room, "That's not true. You're twisting everything." The gavel slammed. "Mr. Brown, sit down or you'll be held in contempt." Kody froze, his chest heaving, then reluctantly sank back down, his glare still locked on Christine. The moment was electric. Viewers could feel the weight of years boiling over in a single outburst. Christine's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, not of joy but of relief, because for once, his mask had cracked in public. When anger boils in the courtroom, the fault lines in the family become greater than ever imagined. Anderson, Christine's attorney, pounced. She produced a thick stack of paperwork, holding them high for the judge to view. Your Honor, these are financial records which demonstrate ongoing mismanagement by Mr. Brown. Money intended for common family expenses was diverted. Vacations, investments, even personal buys, none of it disclosed. This isn't about neglect. This is about lying. Gasps coursed through the courtroom. Robyn went pale as a sheet, her hands shaking more fiercely, as Janelle's eyes darkened as if silently verifying secrets she'd carried for years. Meri finally looked up, her lips set in a thin line, her eyes glazed. The judge leaned forward, his forehead creasing. This is important. I'll permit this evidence to be read in its entirety. The gavel fell again, underscoring the seriousness of the discovery. But if you believe financial infidelity is the worst of it, you have no idea what's about to come. Robyn slowly stood up from her chair, her voice shaking as she asked for leave to approach the stand, and although Kody attempted to seize her wrist to restrain her, she tugged free with tears already welling up in her eyes. The courtroom abuzz as the judge approved her request and silent up in her eyes. The courtroom abuzz as the judge approved her request and silent. Everyone understood Robyn was the quiet one, the loyal one, the wife who had forever stood up for Kody in public, and so for her to turn against him now was like watching the earth shatter under their feet. Her every step resounding as she approached the witness stand, shoulders rolled forward, face pale, and when she sat, her hands shook so violently that she fought to raise her right hand to take the oath. Her voice was barely audible at first, been buried for too long, and in those words alone Kody's head snapped toward her with fury, his eyes bulging in shock as though she had betrayed him more profoundly than any other human being ever could, while Christine leaned forward, aware of the moment she had been waiting for, Janelle's jaw clenching as though preparing for an earthquake, and Meri paralyzed between loyalty and terror, unable to step back, unable to breathe. Robyn's tears streamed down her face as she started to untangle the years of secrets. Kody vowed us equality, but in the bedroom he vowed me things that destroyed everything. He vowed me I was always going to be his favorite, that the others were transient, that money would forever be done through me so he could retain control, and the gasps in the courtroom resounded like thunder, reporters writing faster, the judge raising his brows in dismay, 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 the judge raising his brows in dismay, his brows in dismay, the judge raising his brows in dismay, starting faster, the judge raising his brows in dismay, leaned forward, whispering, "Go on, tell them all." Robyn's cries interrupted her words, but she continued, confessing to secret accounts, backroom real estate deals, and late-night talks where Kody allegedly conspired to exclude Christine and Janelle from the family finances entirely, his words sending shivers. They don't count, only you do, Robyn, only you and your children will have security, and although Kody yelled lies. Behind the judge, across the room, the judge shut him down with a gavel blow, wood ringing like lightning, pushing him back into his seat as veins protruded across his forehead, air choking in his throat. And this is where even the most powerful allegiances start to break under the pressure of truth. Robyn went on, her sniffling softer now, near resignation, her words like daggers cutting the painstakingly constructed image Kody had created for years. He instructed me to play dumb, be quiet, make Christine and Janelle seem ungrateful, make Meri question herself, and I did. I did because I was scared of losing him, but I can't do it anymore. And her face sank into her hands as the gallery burst with whispers. The bays sank into her hands as the gallery burst with whispers. The bays but mixed with sorrow because this wasn't betrayal just against her, it was betrayal of all of them. Kody pushed back in his chair, his fists so tight his knuckles went white. His glare focused on Robyn as if he could stop her by sheer willpower alone, but she didn't stop, not now, not after all these years of silence, and the judge leaned forward, his tone calm but serious. "Mrs. Brown, are you swearing this court that Mr. Brown knowingly deceived his wives for money?" And Robyn nodded, her whisper trembling the room. "Yes, that's precisely what I'm saying." The silence that greeted it was choking, the sort that presses on your chest until you can't draw breath, and then Janelle, unable to suppress it longer, stood up suddenly, her voice echoing through the chamber. I knew it. I knew it all along, but hearing her confess it, he used us, each and every one of us, and for what? In order to save himself while we gave everything. The courtroom erupted once again, the judge banging the gavel, reporters almost spilling out of their chairs in order to get the shot, and Meri covering her mouth, eyes glazing as if she could shatter right then, caught in the middle of the man she thought she loved and the truth disintegrating before her. The further we descend, the more perilous are the discoveries, and you won't believe what else lurks beneath the surface. Anderson took her chance, walking deliberately in front of the witness stand, her voice firm but acerbic. Robyn, do you have evidence? Letters, texts, something concrete that backs up your assertions? And Robyn hesitated, her lips shaking, before she dug into her bag and produced a slim folder, her hands shaking so hard the papers almost fell out of her fingers. When Anderson accepted them, her eyes flashed, her lips twisting into the slightest smirk of triumph. She handed them to the judge, who flipped through, his eyebrows rising higher with every page. Deeds to property, bank wires, even private messages where Kody's words were exposed for his favoritism and manipulation. Kody leapt up again, screaming, "You don't understand? Those were taken out of context." But this time the judge's patience was frayed, his gavel crashing harder than ever. "Mr. Brown, one more tantrum and you'll be sleeping in a cell tonight." The room became quiet once again, everyone staring at Robyn as her face streamed with tears, but her voice was firmer now, calmer, as if relieved by finally having spoken out. "I remained silent. I remained silent. And I can't undo it. But the truth is here now. And it's time everyone realizes that for what it is." Christine took a shuddering breath. Janelle nodded as if affirming what her heart had already known, and Meri looked away, unable to meet any of their eyes, her shoulders heaving with silent tears. And when silence drops like this, it's only because the tempest that follows will be so much more violent. The judge cleared his throat, speaking to the courtroom. "This evidence is admissible, and it drastically alters the breadth of this trial." His voice laced with the weight of the moment, and for the first time, the scales seemed to be tipping, Christine's battle for truth picking up steam while Kody's facade continued to fray. But just as the gallery came alive with rumor, just as Christine's lawyer started to ready the next killing blow, the unthinkable occurred. Meri, who had remained silent up until now, rose to her feet, her voice shaking but ringing clearly in the air. "Your Honor, I must testify as well, because there are things Robyn doesn't even know." The room came to a halt, all heads turning, Christine's mouth gaping in surprise, Robyn's eyes going wide, Janelle tensing like a soldier alert for combat, and Kody looking at Meri in stark betrayal, his lips shaping the word, "Don't." Though no one heard a sound, and yet Meri's face set, the tears glinting in her eyes but her voice firm. "I've held his darkest secrets, and if I don't speak now, I'll never forgive myself." And with that, the courtroom was dropped into a silence more frightening than any scream, for everyone knew that if Meri had been covering for Kody all these years, what she was about to say could ruin everything. Meri slowly stood up, each movement forced, as though she was emerging out of a shadow she had lived under for decades, and the courtroom seemed to take a collective breath, the tension so heavy it was almost palpable. Kody's eyes widened as he understood she was going to address them, the quietest and most introverted wife standing now with a ferocity that dwarfed Christine's anger. Her hands folded tightly around the handwritten notes she had made 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 notes. Hodnivlias. The judge gestured for her to proceed. Her voice started soft, almost breakable. "I have remained silent for too long. I've defended a man who's betrayed us all in ways you can't even conceive." And the gallery erupted instantly, whispers pouring like waves across the room, Christine leaning intently forward, Robyn's tears burning her eyes all over again, Janelle sitting tensely, her face set for affirmation, and Kody shifting uneasily, his jaw set, desperate to hide the panic spreading across his face. Meri's eyes darted around the courtroom, resting fleetingly upon each wife, her eyes heavy with regret and warning, before she spoke on, describing secret trysts, Midnight telephone calls and coercive measures Kody had reportedly used to dominate the household, the finances, and even the children's perceptions of one another. Her words weaving a picture of intentional isolation, hushed whispers used to sow distrust in their midst, and assist trust 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 in their midst, and assist and assist and assist and assist and assist. Hush spoke softly, but the gravity in her voice caused everyone to curl forward, their heads bent. He wanted us to distrust each other, to doubt ourselves, to feel that our sacrifices were for nothing if we had the audacity to speak, and Kody's face went red, his fingers curling over the lip of the table so hard his knuckles glowed white in the unforgiving courtroom lights. And if betrayal goes this deep, it cuts through years like a knife you never anticipated. She presented documents, printouts of messages, and bank statements she had covertly collected over months and handed them to the judge, who flipped through them with visible horror. Transactions noted in shorthand codes, emails telling Robyn to deceive the rest, and even schemes to change wills and property deeds without permission. The whispers in the audience swelled into a murmur that swelled further into a rumble as journalists wrote frantically, clicking their cameras sporadically, freezing every slight movement, every blink, every burst-lipped glance. Meri's voice became stronger with every disclosure, a blend of elation and pain. I was an accomplice to the silence because I feared what he would do to me if I spoke out, but I can no longer exist with the burden of knowing he lied to all of you, that he manipulated our love, our trust, and our love, our trust, and our lives. And Christine's hand tightened on the lip of her seat, knuckles white, eyes shining as if finally confirming every thought she had entertained, firming 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 every thought she had entertained. Fidovlo's white, knuckles white, eyes shining as if finally confirming every thought she had entertained. Fida stronger, knuckles white, eyes shining as Kody attempted to interrupt, yelling across the room, but the gavel crashed down with a crisp snap, stalling him in mid-sentence, and Judge Peterson's glare made it plain there was no room for leniency. One more display of behavior, Mr. Brown, and you will be in contempt, and Kody slumped back, fuming, his pride hurt deeper than anyone could conceive. Each disclosed secret today seems like a spark, waiting to start the most explosive chain reaction of their lives. Meri shifted uncomfortably, voice weakening, nearly begging. I did what I felt was right at the moment in an effort to spare the family suffering, to spare myself, but the deception has grown, the manipulation has grown, and the truth must be unleashed now. And as she uttered these words, the crowd could sense the tension mounting, an unseen force bearing down upon the family, a hurricane that had been building up for years now, fully unleashed 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 now, fully unleashed. Everyone gasping. She chronicled cases in which Kody purportedly forced wife against wife, promoted secrecy, and rewarded obedience with privilege and punished dissent with emotional withdrawal, leaving the other struggling to survive in a home where love was conditional and honesty was risky. Robyn's hands shook in her lap as she sat through it, Christine's mouth opening in stunned anger, and Janelle's eyes flashing, fists clenched, outward manifestation of pent fury finally vindicated. And the court hears on, and the crowd experiences shock, disbelief, and grim satisfaction at secrets uncovered. Meri's eyes turned to Kody, resolute now, and her tone grew cold. You said you told us all that we were equal, that we were loved, but your actions demonstrate the opposite. You used us, manipulated us, and when I tell them this in court, it is not revenge. It is the truth, and it is the only way that we will ever be able to heal. And Kody's lips shook, his hands involuntarily trembling, as the wives looked at one another, a mix of sadness and vindication crossing their faces. The gallery was holding its breath as Meri produced a final batch of emails, displaying plans for transfers of property and clandestine instructions designed to tear the family apart forever. The consequences so dire that even the judge hesitated before proceeding, his brow furrowed in incredulity. Christine's voice was hardly audible as she whispered to Anderson, "This is it. This is everything we suspected and more." And Robyn's shoulders spasmed as she softly added, "I can't believe she held on to this all this time." And Janelle mumbled, "It explains everything." And just when you imagine the storm of emotions has reached its crescendo, the next piece of news threatens to bring everything crashing down. Meri's final testimony included a bombshell. A series of conversations in which Kody allegedly threatened to cut Meri, framing it as a power move meant to scare the other wives into compliance, demonstrating a cold and calculated side that none of them had truly witnessed before. Her words left the courtroom in stunned silence, the weight of betrayal so heavy it seemed to press down on the ceiling, the lights, the walls, as if pressed down on the ceiling, the lights, the walls, as if pressed down on the ceiling, the lights, the walls, as if proviates down on the ceiling, the lights, the walls, as if the walls, as if finest down on the ceiling, the lights, defend silence, once been the family's foundation. Cody's face dropped, anger alloyed with fear, and his lawyer grumbled something under his breath, sensing the extent of the ruin, and the wives exchanged a tacit, almost wordless understanding, knowing that the secrets would now forever alter their marriages. And the audience can't turn away, because the tension is unsustainable, the stakes obscenely high, and the next second could remake everything. Meri's lips quivered as she finished, her tone gentle but resolute. "I am done hiding. I am done being complicit. The truth has lain buried for too long, and it is time for each and every one of you, and for the world, to behold him for what he really is." And she sat down, her hands trembling but her back erect, the hush in the courtroom taut, the meaning of her words hanging like a thundercloud above each and every one of them. The judge exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples, and finally said, "We will break for the day, but understand, this testimony changes the entire trajectory of this case." And as the gavel came down, the wives filed out, each lost in their thoughts, each processing betrayal, loyalty, and the fear of what came next, while Kody sat frozen, a man realizing for the first time that his control, carefully constructed over decades, had been constructed over decades, had begrudged over decades, had begrudged over decades, had begrudged nobody's control, carefully constructed over decades, had begrudged pros time that his control, carefully constructed over decades, had begrudged. While Kody sat buzzing with speculation, the audience was left with a single question. If Meri's revelations were this devastating, what else remained hidden, and how much more could this family survive before the next bombshell dropped? The courtroom reconvened the following morning, the tension so thick it seemed to vibrate in the air, and as everyone filed back to their seats, the eyes of the gallery, reporters, and even the jury were fixed on Kody, who sat rigid, jaw tight, hands folded, beads of sweat forming at his temple as if the weight of Meri and Robyn's testimonies had physically struck him, while Christine, face pale but determined, leaned forward in her seat, forward in her seat, forward in her seat, on seat, forward in her seat, times forward in her seat, them weight in her seat, wet, as if wet drumming, lean forward in her seat, anticipation, and Janelle's hands clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms, a mixture of rage, fear, and validation coursing through her veins. The judge called the court to order, gavel striking with a force that echoed like a heartbeat, and as the first witness of the day was called, an air of expectation hovered, for the next revelation promised to shatter the fragile balance of the family yet again. And it was Kody's former business at the family yet again. And it was Kody's former business today was Kody's former business at the Yale's former business today was Kody's former business at year. There's next twin-cover business of the family yet again, and it was Kody's former business of the family yet again, and it eyes and a tremor in his hands, clutching folders filled with financial statements, receipts, and emails. his voice quivering as he laid out in meticulous detail how Kody allegedly redirected family funds, manipulated accounts, and attempted to conceal the transactions from the other wives. The courtroom buzzing as each document was projected onto the large screens, showing transfers, unexplained expenses, and shadowy property purchases, 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 shadowy property purchases. Furiously, cameras capturing every twitch of Kody's face, every subtle expression of shock or disbelief among the wives, and the tension ratcheted higher when Christine rose, pointing to the screen, her voice steady but sharp. "This is what we've suspected for years, and now it's undeniable." While Robyn covered her mouth, eyes wide, tears threatening to spill, and Janelle's jaw tightened as if she were swallowing a lifetime of anger all at once. And just when the court believes it's come to its breaking point, the tempest starts raging even more violently. The manager went on, laying out a pattern of deceit, recounting clandestine meetings with Kody in which money was transferred without agreement, and episodes during which Kody allegedly ordered him to keep things from Christine and Janelle but promised Robyn that she alone would be the gainer, every sentence a hammer blow to the tenuous trust that had survived among the wives, and Kody's lawyer interrupted again and again, trying to discredit the wit did again and again, trying to discredit the wit, 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 Flanning's wives, the Wendiglistines, with Kody's lawyer interrupted again and again, trying to discredit the wit, the Wendiglistine, Strabit, the wit, Minticated to level, the wit, Padded the silencing him every time, demanding order as the gallery sat frozen in silence. Then Christine's turn came, stepping up onto the witness stand with a blaze in her eyes, sharing years of observations now made coherent in light of the evidence, explaining nights when bills were left unpaid even with money to spare, hushed arguments she'd heard between Kody and the manager, and the unseen hand steering Robyn into favor. Her voice climbing and falling with emotion, a blend of outrage and heartbreak, painting a vivid picture of heartbreak, painting a vivid picture of Menuniting, a vivid picture of Menuniting's favor, painting a vivid picture of Menat the favor, her voice climbing and falling with emotion, a blend of outrage and heartbreak, painting a vivid picture of While the wives' faces showed a kaleidoscope of emotion, Robyn embarrassed but tearful, Janelle angry but hurt, Meri quiet and reflective, Kody flushed, shaking with pent-up rage, and the courtroom itself seemed to lean forward, drawn into the weight of the moment. The more they approach truth, the denser the air is, choking and charged all at the same time. Then came the most shocking twist of the session. A previously undisclosed email chain was revealed, showing Kody allegedly orchestrating narratives to turn the wives against each other, sending instructions to Robyn to subtly undermine Christine in public, to plant doubts in Janelle's mind, and to isolate Meri emotionally, a revelation that caused audible gasps, chairs scraping the floor, and reporters murmuring frantically, while the wives reaction frantically, while the wives reactionly, while the wives frantically, while the wives reactions triply, while the wives reactions trother, quivering, eyes wide in disbelief, Janelle covering her face for a moment, Robyn burying her head in her hands, and Meri's body shaking as though the weight of knowing had finally caught up with her physically. The courtroom contracted under the tension, the walls bearing down as the judge cleared his throat, the gavel ringing like a drumbeat of judgment, demanding silence, but the energy was unstoppable. And when betrayal is this sophisticated, every disclosure feels like the floor dropping away beneath your feet. Kody attempted to interrupt once more, growing louder in his accusations of collusion on the part of Christine and the manager, but the judge's fierce glare was enough to quiet him at once, and the situation worsened again as Christine's attorney brought forward evidence that Kody reportedly manipulated some of the family assets in the name of family trust management, and thereby excluded the others. The testimony corroborated by bank corroborated by bank corroborated by bank corroborated by bank Kody liberated by bankstunemorsmin, by bankstunewationworsening of larcenemy Christine's attorney corroborated by bankstransport management, and thereby bankstradenmos, family others, managed banks, neighbors and far-off relatives who had witnessed discrepancies themselves, and the gallery hunched forward as decades of manipulation were revealed before their eyes, air thick with emotion, incredulity, and the pungent sting of betrayal. Then Robyn, remaining in her seat, whispered to Christine, "I never knew it was this bad," and Christine shook her head slowly, half sorrowful, half vindicated, and Janelle hissed softly under her breath, "He lied to all of us." The plainness of the words bearing the weight of years of lying, and even the judge appeared slightly stunned at the sheer extent of evidence.
And just when you thought the drama was going to get no deeper, it goes even deeper into the family's innermost heart.
Meri rose up suddenly, chair scraping noisily, and her voice cut through, firm but angry. "There's more things only I know, things that will explain the emotional toll, the silent battles, the fear and guilt each of us has carried," and the courtroom came to a halt, every eye fixed on her as she reached into her purse, extracting a pile of handwritten letters, voice shaking but defiant. "These are communications Kody tried to destroy. Notes these are communications Kody tried to destroy. Notes these are communications Kody tried to destroy. Notes we're free. Notes we're tried to destroy. Notes we're communications Kody tried to destroy. Notes we to destroy. Notes we ways that cannot be ignored." And as the letters were read out, the wives gasped in shock and relief and heartbreak, while Kody's face went white, his lips framed by silent curses, his hands shaking as if reaching for a lifeline that no longer existed, and the tension grew almost unbearable. The gavel of the judge came down with a hard crack as he spoke to the room. "The court sees the importance of these new disclosures and will accept them as evidence." And the tension was electric, the crowd abuzz, the wives' feelings raw and naked, and Kody's lawyer slumped forward, realizing that the story that they had crafted over so many years was being dismantled before their very eyes. And when secrets this sinister reveal themselves, the result is never what anyone can imagine. And as the session closed, the wives walked out with heavy feet, each lost in thought, each struggling to come to terms with the magnitude of what had been unveiled. Kody still seated, a man whose carefully guarded control for decades had started to unravel in ways he could not restore, and as the doors closed and the buzz of the gallery swelled into speculation and rumor, the crowd was left suspended, waiting to see what the next dramatic session was, dramatic session was, waiting to see what the next dramatic session was, wedding session was, waiting what the next session was, waiting to session wedding session was, waiting to session wedding session wad, waiting to session wedding session wad would, wedding session wedding session wedding session. Whether this broken family could endure the storm of truth that at last had been unleashed in the courtroom. The following session held not only secrets of intimate deceptions, but encounter that could break the family apart for all time. The courtroom was heavy with tension as the fifth session commenced, the air practically charged with expectation, every eye fixed on Kody seated stiff as a rod, his face chalky white, fists locked so tight the veins on his arms bulged like cords, as Christine leaned forward in her seat, eyes burning, determination etched on every curve of her face. Robyn sitting with hands clasped tightly together, jaw clenched as she struggled to calm her pounding heart as court calm her pounding weight of disbelief and vindication swirling in her face, while Meri's eyes were piercing, calculating, as if she had finally grasped the power of the truth, and the judge bellowed the court to order, gavel crashing with force, sending a jolt through the room that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. The first witness brought in was a former household staffer, someone who had witnessed the family dynamics up close and had documented instantations of the building. The first witness the first witness building. The first witness to shake the family did touching the very foundations of the building. under-the-breath conversations designed to play the wives against one another, her voice trembling but firm as she narrated specific incidents, the gallery leaning forward on bated breath, reporters scribbling madly, and Kody shifting uncomfortably in his seat, beads of perspiration forming on his forehead, as Christine's attorney nodded in approval, urging the witness to go on, as Janelle breathed softly, finally. Somebody else saw it finally. Somebody else saw it finally. Somebody else saw it, urging else saw it loudly. Somebody else saw it lily, and Hody softly, finally. Somebody else softly, finally. Somebody else softly, finally. And Meri sitting still, eyes locked on Kody, the tension crackling like a live wire. And when the walls of lies are stripped bare, the truth comes crashing down harder than anyone can ever dream. The aide disclosed that Kody had purportedly issued clandestine directives to Robyn about finances, excluding the others while concurrently undermining Christine and Janelle in little ways, making every wife uncertain, vulnerable, and isolated, presenting a picture of manipulation so detailed it was nearly cinematic, and the courtroom hung upon every word. The brunt of decades of domination laid out, every response a testament to laid out, every response a testament to its nation laid out, every response a testament to between struggled futilely to object on grounds of hearsay, but the judge overruled, highlighting the witness's personal information and the specificity to the current charges, and Kody's face turned red with rage, lips twitching, while the wives shared glances that said it all, knowing their collective suspicions were now ratified in public. Then Christine rose, stepping to the witness stand herself again, voice calm but edged with steel, recounting years of subtle manipulation, explaining the emotional and financial toll the alleged deceit had taken on her, detailing nights spent crying silently in her bedroom, moments of doubt and fear, and small instances where she suspected favoritism but lacked proof until now, each word striking like a hammer, forcing the audience and jury to, like a hammer, forcing the audience and jury to, liking like a hammer, forcing the audience and jury to clinch tighter, his fists gripping the table, while Robyn's tears fell silently, Janelle's shoulders stiffened, and Meri's eyes narrowed, a quiet storm brewing within her. And just when you think the revelations have reached their height, the next confession cuts even deeper. The judge allowed a surprise witness, an accountant who had worked with the family discreetly, to present records showing irregular financial transfers, purchases labeled ambiguously, and assets moved between accounts to benefit one wife over the others. The data projected for everyone to see, and the courtroom gasped audibly, whispers rippling through the gallery, cameras flashing, while Kody's face drained of color, his lawyer struggling to a color, his lawyer struggling to a color, his lawyer struggling to a coloring to a color, his lawyer struggling 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 to a cutably, his lawyer struggling to a color, his lawyer struggling to a color, his lawyer Reactions were visceral, Christine biting her lip, Janelle's hands trembling, Robyn shaking her head in disbelief, and Meri's eyes glinting with a mixture of triumph and sorrow, the weight of years of secrets finally manifesting in the form of irrefutable evidence. Then the emotional tension mounted even higher when Robyn, prodded by the judge, under oath confessed she was aware of certain financial manipulations and had decided to go along out of fear and devotion. Her confession raw and shaking, rocking the courtroom to its foundations, making Christine gasp shakily, Janelle whisper softly, "I can't believe she did that," and Kody's face twisted in anger, disbelief, and terror. The dawning realization, terror, the dawning realization, the dawning realization, the dawning realization, the dawning realization. Before the law. And when allegiances change inside a courtroom, the repercussions are sudden and unforgettable. The session became even more heated as Meri moved forward once again, her voice firm but biting as she produced intimate messages between Kody and his staff outlining orders to emotionally manipulate the others, spreading jealousy, distrust, and confusion, proof that shed decades of family life in a whole new light. The audience enthralled, the gallery hushed in awe, while reporters frantically wrote down every detail, and Kody's face turned white, his hands shaking as he realized the depth of exposure, his control tearing apart before all eyes, the power he'd exercised for years slipping through his fingers like sand. Then Christine, with the growing evidence, stood before Kody face to face, voice firm, eyes aflame. You told us we were equals, that you loved us, but this shows otherwise. You orchestrated decades of manipulation, deception, and favoritism. How can anyone trust you? The courtroom waited with bated breath. Cody's lips opened, but nothing emerged, his attorney trying to break in, but the tension was palpable, all eyes on the developing confrontation. And when confrontation reaches a boiling point, even the most impenetrable walls fall. Meri joined in, cool but incisive. You ruled over us by fear, broken promises, and secrets, and now it's all coming out. No amount of excuses can erase the pain, the confusion, the distrust you've sown. The gallery murmured, the wives' expressions ranged from anguish to vindication, Cody's face a mask of shock, his defenses collapsing while Christine whispered under her breath, "This is it, the moment everything changes," and Robyn quietly sobbed, Janelle's hands clenching and unclenching, realizing the truth they had long suspected was now undeniable, a tidal wave of emotion washing over everyone in the courtroom. Then the judge, sensitive to the seriousness of the testimonies, called for a recess, allowing the family time to digest the burden of confession, confrontation, and incontrovertible evidence bearing down on them like a physical weight. And as the wives slowly stood up to depart, their feet heavy, eyes a mix of sadness, victory, and fear, the audience could almost hear the beat of history being written in that room. The storm very far from a 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 bezicoster. The storm very far from a biblical weight, and a storm very far from a both concert, the storm very far from a bizarre series, physical rates about whether the family could endure the revelations to come. And when the next installment opens, one stunning betrayal will have everyone wondering. The courtroom resumed under a fraught, almost asphyxiating silence, the air electric with anticipation as everyone resumed their seats, Kody sitting stiffly, eyes flicking nervously to and from Christine, Meri, and Janelle, his hands shaking slightly in an effort to hide it, while Christine leaned forward, fingers interlaced, eyes keen and unflinching, Robyn unflinching, Robyn unflinching, Robyn. Tears which she pushed back sternly, Janelle edging forward slightly in her seat, jaw clenched between rage and sorrow, and Meri sitting up straight, her posture stiff, eyes set on Kody with a combination of sorrow and retribution, the gavel thudding onto the podium as Judge Peterson called the proceedings to order, the echoes echoing through the chamber, proclaiming that today would be the day it all came out in the open, the entire scope of years of manipulation, 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 the echoes of manipulation, proclaiming that entire scope of years of manipulation, the echoes echo a to the echoes echoing the chambers of treason. As the first witness, a former confidant of the family, emerged, nervous but unflinching, to set out the ways in which Kody supposedly manipulated schedules, dictated communication between the wives, and taught Robyn techniques calculated to isolate Christine and Janelle, each detail supported by corroborative notes, messages, and calendar entries, the gallery leaning forward in mutual shock, muttering spreading around the room in mutual shock, muttering spreading around the root in spreading around the root in mutual shock, muttering spreading around the roots, forwarding spreading around the roots, muttering spreading around the roots, but muttering spreading around the root, miss spreading around the roots, spreading around spreading isom mutual shock, Kody squirming uncomfortably in his seat, jaw set, beads of sweat appearing along his temple, his attorney whispering urgently in his ear, trying to stifle the rising tidal wave of damning evidence. And when the load of concealed truths falls, it lands on everyone with more force than anticipated. The witness testified to moments of emotional manipulation, whispered reproach intended to instill doubt, selective listening to select children, and clandestine monetary favors patently revealing favoritism, while Christine, voice firm but frigid, testified in turn about what she had witnessed, nights of wakeful anxiety, moments of muted horror, and overheard conversations suddenly confirming the evidence, words shooting like arrows, shooting like arrows, shooting like arrows, shooting like arrows, arrows shooting like arrows, words shooting like arrows, arrows shooting like arrows, arrows shooting like arrows, words shooting like arrows, words shooting like arrows, words shooting like arrows, arrows, words shooting like arrows. Wiping at her tears, Janelle White knuckling the armrest, and Meri exhaling sharply, eyes shining with a combination of vindication and sadness, all the while the face of Kody betraying a man on the verge of losing control, the fractures emerging in a well-built facade. And then came the stunning revelation. Emails and messages from Kody to a financial advisor were produced, indicating intentional efforts to siphon money, sow mistrust among the wives, and make sure that Robyn was still the favored one. The proof displayed on screens big enough for all to see, the courtroom gasping loudly, mutterings rising as reporters recorded the facts, and Kody's lips quivering, his face white, aware that the years of 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 White, his face white, aware that the years of White, aware that the years of Wisem, his face white, aware that the years of favoring, his face white, aware that the years of White, aware. And when proof is inescapable, even the most powerful defenses collapse. Meri's voice rose, calm but cutting, recounting private conversations Kody had with her that revealed threats, promises, and manipulations so cold they left a shiver across the courtroom. Her words painting Kody as a man willing to destroy relationships for control, while Christine's expression shifted from sorrow to fiery resolve. Robyn shaking her head in disbelief, and Janelle's fists clenched so tightly her nails cut into her palms, the cut into her palms, the cutly her nails cut into her palms, the cucked palms, the cucked cut to her palms, the cucked palms, the cucked proms, the cucked proms, the cucked palms, the cucked proms, the cucked proms, the cucked toms, the tightly her nails cut into her palms, the cucked proms, the cucked decades of secrets pressing down, each revelation a hammer blow to the family structure. The stress mounted higher when the judge permitted a surprise witness, an accountant who had initially been given the go-by, to give testimony, exposing inconsistencies in the ownership of property, secret accounts, and doctored trust agreements. The finer details corroborating previous testimony, sending the gallery into shock. Kody openly sweating, his attorney stalling in the face of overwhelming evidence, Christine nodding ever so sly in the face of overwhelming evidence, Christine nodding ever so sly, nodding ever so sliming evidence, Christine nodding ever so sly, Blotting nodding ever so sliding, Christine nodding ever so sliding, blotting away tears, and Janelle muttering under her breath, "It's all true." And where trust is broken in the light of irrefutable truth, the devastation is catastrophic. Christine then pinned Kody squarely on the stand, her voice echoing in the courtroom. "You told us we were equals, and yet you planned deception, manipulation, and favoritism. How do you justify that?" Kody's lips parted, his voice stumbling, stuttering as he tried to say his piece, but the force of testimony and the group glare of the wives left him speechless, and Meri's cool, cutting voice interjected, "You toyed with our hearts and our lives, and now the world gets to see the truth we lived." The gallery fell silent, the seriousness of the confrontation hanging in the air, the crowd leaning forward in every word, while the wives struggled with years of heartbreak, shock, grief, and vindication. And when the conflict is this intense, each beat of the heart seems louder, each response exaggerated. Then the dramatic climax of emotion. Robyn, sobbing but firm, confessed to her own involvement in some manipulation, explaining the fear, loyalty, and confusion that had guarded her secret for so long. The courtroom gasping at the brutal candor, adding yet another level of complexity, Christine shaking unsteadily, Janelle whispering in amazement, and Meri sitting in rapt attention, the wives' feelings entwining, becoming a shared cut to tension, the wives' feelings entwining, becoming a shared cut, cuffs feelings entwining, becoming a shared cut building, becoming a shared cut buildings entwining. Best friend now had testified against him publicly, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, and helpless. The session took an even higher turn when handwritten letters appeared on the scene. Letters Kody supposedly penned to employees and wives ordering silence, threats, and manipulation, read word by word for the court to hear, each utterance a revelation that made the emotional impact stronger. The wives looking shocked, angry, and vindicated, the gallery leaning forward in expectation, the cameras capturing every nuance of expression, and Kody's of expression, and Kody's of expression, and Kody's every nuance of expression, and Kody's of expression, and Kody's of expression, and Kody's of expression, and Kody's of avlons. The cameras capturing every nuance of expression, and Kody's of disclosure. And when letters uncover decades of lies, the past meets the present in spectacular fashion. The judge, recognizing the emotional intensity, ordered a brief recess, giving the family and courtroom a moment to breathe. Though the tension remained suffocating, the weight of confessions, confrontations, and documented manipulation pressing down, leaving Kody slumped slightly in his chair, Christine's jaw tight, Robyn wiping her face, Janelle shaking her head, and Meri's eyes locked on Kody with a mixture of sorrow, defiance, and vindication. As the hearing continued, the last testimony uncovered even greater admissions, buried commitments, threatened declarations over real estate and children, and a tapestry of favoritism intricately articulated by a procession of witnesses, each adding to the story of a family torn asunder by manipulation, lies, and unspoken emotional combat. The gallery left reeling, the wives piecing together decades of betrayal in the moment, as piecing together decades of betrayal in the moment, as reeling, as piecing together decades of betrayal in the moment, as unspoken a moment, as gallery left reeling, the wives piecing together decades of betrayal in the moment, as exposure, the loss of control he had exercised for decades, and the certainty of repercussions. And just when it seems the storm cannot get any stronger, the last revelation takes everyone by their breath, wondering what happens next. As the session came to a close, the judge's gavel came down hard, announcing the end of a day that would change the course of this family's life forever. The wives filing out in heavy footsteps, eyes exhibiting shock, sorrow, and vindication, Kody still seated, aware his grip was lost, the audience left perched on the edge of their seats, hoping against hope for the next session, knowing that the next few minutes would reconfigure alliances, loyalties, family. The courtroom was electric with tension as the seventh session got underway, the air heavy with anticipation, all eyes on Kody, who sat stiff, hands clasped tightly in his lap, jaw clenched, a flash of fear shooting through his eyes as Christine leaned in, fingers interlocked, face a combination of sorrow and rage. Robyn wiping away tears from her face, Janelle sitting stiff as a board with anger, and Meri sitting tall, her eyes blazing with fierce deter eyes, blazing with fierce deter eyes, deter eyes, blazing with fierce deter eyes, blazing with fierce deter, and Meri sitting tall, her eyes blazing with fierce deter, and Meri sitting tall, her eyes blazing with fierce deter, and raised tall. Judge Peterson banged the court into session, declaring that today would be the day that revelations would irrevocably realign the family dynamic, and the first witness, a former household staff member, emerged, her voice shaking as she spoke of instances of Kody's deliberate favoritism, emotional manipulation, and calculated deception, telling of conversations wherein he allegedly urged Robyn to hold on to control of finances and famses and famses and famses and famses and famses and famses and finances and famses and family to send family to send. The courtroom leaning in as one, the audience transfixed by the magnitude of deception being revealed, Kody squirming uncomfortably in his seat, lips twitching as his attorney whispered frantically, trying damage control, and Christine letting out a sharp breath, her eyes shining with vindication. And when the
Layers of dishonesty start to unmask. Each disclosure is like a shockwave.
The witness presented documents, emails, and texts verifying clandestine directions and monetary manipulations, casting them out for all to witness, the gallery whispering loudly, reporters writing furiously, and Kody's face losing color, grasping the entire magnitude of revelation, while the wives shared glances of incredulity, tragedy, and empowerment. The burden of decades of concealed realities at last expressing itself realities at last expressing itself realities at last expressing itself conself expressing itself conself. Christine's voice echoed out, serene yet incisive, speaking to Kody directly. You said we were equals, that we were trusted, but all actions cry otherwise. How are we supposed to trust anything you have to say? Cody's lips quivered, his eyes scanning around, the courtroom hushed as he fought to speak, his attorney attempting to interrupt, but the weight of the compiled evidence rendered any defense futile. And when the battle comes this far, each beat is amplified, each response heightened. Meri moved forward next, pulling out a set of letters and personal messages describing threats, offers, and manipulations, her tone firm, unshakable. "You have manipulated, lied, and toyed with our feelings long enough." The truth could no longer be hidden. The gallery held its breath in wonder, the pressure of years of secrecy bearing down like a physical weight, Christine smiling slightly, Robyn mopping at new tears, and Janelle releasing her breath in a sharp hiss, the emotional charge in the air almost unendurable. Then came the shocker. A new witness, a family acquaintance who knew of some manipulations, came forward with Cody's purported attempts at manipulating public opinion, dictating appearances on the Sister Wives reality show, and dictating narratives for the purpose of portraying some of the wives in positive or negative lights, each one of which sent a ripple through the court, Kody wincing plainly, the audience leaning forward, mesmerized by the audience leaning forward, mesmerized by the audience leaning forward, mesmerized by the forward, mesmerized by the forward, mesmerized by the insum forward, mesmerized by the insum forward, mesmerized by the insum forward, mesmerized by the is forward, mesmerized by the is spaceman forward. And when control is uncovered as manipulation, betrayal hurts deeper than ever before. The judge allowed Christine to take the stand again, her voice measured but icy as she recounted private incidents, emotional abuse, and moments where Cody's favoritism created tension and despair. The gallery leaning in, witnesses nodding, Robyn's hands shaking as she listened, Janelle's fists tightening, Meri's eyes narrowed with resolve, and Kody sitting in stunned silence, his lawyer faltering under the mounting weight of testimony and evidence. Then Robyn, tearful but resolute, admitted her complicity in specific acts, describing fear, loyalty, and the pressure that had kept her silent. Every word reverberating through the courtroom, Christine exhaling, Janelle whispering softly, and Meri's gaze cutting into Kody with quiet fury, leaving him visibly shaken.
And when confessions are laid bare, alliances shift and trust shatters irreversibly.
The highlight of the session came when Cody's past emails, concealed financial records, and personal letters were read out loud, showing schemes to manipulate, alienate, and dominate his wives across generations, the courtroom breathing so hard it was audible, murmurs spilling like waves, camera flash popping, and the faces of the wives a picture of shock, grief, and vindication, while Cody's face whitened, realization setting in that his orchestrates and 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 setting in that his orchestrates of praised, realization setting in that his orchestrates topping, realization setting in that his orchestrates brands. Christine, shaking but resolute, stood up to him again. "This is the truth you've made. Do you own it?" The room became quiet, Cody's mouth opened, but no actual words escaped, the burden of decades of manipulation rendering him immobilized, the wives looking at each other with their eyes telling volumes of betrayal, courage, and survival. And when it's all unmasked, each secret exposed destabilizes everything you used to think was true. Meri's final testimony for the session unveiled threats Kody had allegedly made regarding property, children, and family reputation, her voice unwavering, the gallery leaning forward as each revelation landed with the force of a hammer, Robyn sobbing quietly, Janelle gripping her chair, Christine's eyes glinting with a mix of sorrow and righteous fury, and Kody sinking lower in his seat, his control evaporating with every word, unable to control evaporating with every word, unable to every word, unable to control evaporating with every word, unable to revelation, livered, unable to deliver and discoro and nebbing over, unable to discoro and righteous fury, and calling a brief recess, the wives rose slowly, each step heavy with emotion, the room buzzing with speculation, whispers, and stunned silence, leaving the audience breathless, desperate to see what Session 8 would reveal about the fate of the family, the alliances, and the consequences that were now inevitable. And as the doors shut, one lingering question remained. Can this family ever fully heal once the truth has been revealed? The last session of the courtroom drama began under a charged, almost stifling tension, the air heavy with anticipation and the unspoken burden of years of deception. Kody sitting stiff, his fists clenched on the tabletop, jaw clenched, eyes shooting nervously to Christine, Robyn, Janelle, and Meri, each of whom sat with faces that reflected sorrow, defiance, and quiet vindication. While the gavel came down sharply, signaling the session's agents edging the session's agents agent adtenic, signaling the session's agents adding dealing the session's admication, while the gavel came down sharply, signaling the session's adtenobi, sorrow, defiance, didn't know the gavel came down sharply, signaling the session's adsto, authority, proclaiming that today would hold forth in full the full measure of decades of manipulation, secrecy, and betrayal. The first witness, a financial advisor, explained complex transactions, secret assets, and schemes of favoritism allegedly orchestrated by Kody, projecting documents on the courtroom floor for all to view, each revelation sparking gasps, hushed speculation, and a palpable tension that had the audience laudation, that had the audience laudable tension, that had the audience laudial that had the audience laudal tension that had the audience laudal. And Kody's more strained by the second, realizing that each thread of his carefully spun control was being stripped away before all of them. And when the truth at last comes out, it shakes the foundations of those who constructed it. Christine then took the stand, recounting emotional moments, instances of subtle manipulation, and nights of sleepless worry, her voice steady but sharp, compelling the court to understand the psychological toll of Kody's actions. Robyn's hands trembling in her lap, Janelle's shoulders stiff with emotion, and Meri's eyes locked onto Kody, a mixture of sorrow, anger, and righteous resolve burning in her gaze. The courtroom leaned in, captivated burning in her gaze. The courtroom leaned in, captivated anger. The courtroom leaned in, captivated days. The courtroom leaned in, captivated elections. The courtroom leaned in, captivated. The courtroom leaned in, captivated. The courtroom leaned in, captive, attempted to intervene, but the sheer weight of evidence and personal testimony rendered any defense tenuous at best. And then the stunning testimony of Robyn, weeping but firm, admitting her guilt in some of the manipulations and internal struggle that had bound her to silence, her voice shaking as she explained how fear and loyalty and love had restrained her from speaking out sooner, Christine nodding marginally, Janelle whispering softly in disbelief, Meri observing with piercing intensity. The crowd held entranced as decades of concealment were exposed, as decades of concealment were exposed, a concealment were exposed, concealment were exposed, concealment were exposed, digging out struggle that in were exposed, beaking out unit, were exposed, fearing out struggle, belief. Meri exposed, doubt, and sealment were exposed, teen novelty. And when confessions conflict with evidence, allegiances are turned, and trust is irreparably lost. The session became more dramatic as Meri pulled out private letters, emails, and handwritten messages conveying threats, promises, and commands intended to control the family dynamics, each one confirming previous testimony and leaving the gallery shocked, reporters writing furiously, Kody visibly shaking, lips agape in disbelief, and the wives grappling with the magnitude of the revelations, a blend of confirmation, grief, and empowerment etched on their faces, the courtroom charged with tension and emotion. Christine went straight to Kody, her tone firm and unshakable. For all these years, you said we had equality, love, and trust, but your behavior indicates otherwise. How do you explain this to the family that you say you love? The room went silent, Kody stumbling over words, unable to make sense of them, the wives sharing a look heavy with emotion as the gallery sat in expectation tension, the weight of decades of manipulation bearing down like a physical force. And when confrontation is at its height, even the best-guarded walls break down. Next, the judge permitted a surprise last witness, a former family assistant who had witnessed long secret feuds, to reveal scenes of isolation, favoritism, and emotional manipulation that had defined the family for decades, their testimony confirming all previous evidence, leaving Kody visibly shaken, his attorney struggling to remain composed, and the wives' faces a blend of grief, vindication, and weary relief. Robyn then revealed the final shocking twist. Documents proving that certain properties and accounts had been moved secretly, benefiting her but undermining the other wives. The revelation sending ripples through the courtroom, Christine's jaw tightening, Janelle exhaling sharply, and Meri's eyes narrowing, while Kody's face registered sheer panic, realizing the totality of exposure, control slipping irreversibly. And when the final secrets are revealed, the consequences are immediate and irreversible. The emotional height was reached when Christine, her voice shaking with fury and sadness, addressed Kody for the final time, recounting the emotional and financial burden of decades of manipulation. The courtroom listening intently, Robyn dabbing away tears, Janelle shaking her head, Meri tall with righteous indignation, and Kody understanding that his efforts at domination had been completely destroyed. His well-crafted persona broken beyond Rena broken, beyond Rena broken, beyond Rena Rena, beyond Rena Rena steroid. His well-crafted persona broken beyond Rena Stano broken, beyond Reddit beyond Reddit sadness. Then the judge, speaking to the family and the court, recounted the evidence, witness accounts, and paperwork, stressing the gravity of Kody's reported deeds, the law at stake, and the irreversible realignments of family dynamics, leaving the wives to deal with the emotional repercussions, the audience in a tizzy, the gallery abuzz with rumor, and Kody slouching, the weight of years of manipulation finally fully realized. And when justice, truth, and betrayal meet, the family has to determine if reconciliation is an option or if the cracks are too big to fill. And as the session drew to a close, the wives slowly stood, each step weighed with emotion, their faces etched with grief, vindication, sorrow, and a tentative sense of empowerment, Kody sitting, visibly shattered, the courtroom ringing out with the enormity of what had just taken place, the gavel thudding home one last time, marking the close of this final chapter in the family's stormy past, leaving viewers hanging on the edge of their seat, hearts race seat, hearts race race, hearts race race, hearts race race hanging on the edge of their seat, hearts race race hanging on the edge of their seat, hearts race sitting, visibly shattered, ringing on the edge of their seat, hearts race tattered, race ringing on the edge of their seat, hearts race hanging on the edge of their seat, hearts race hanging on the edge of their. This family ever really heal once the truth has been so fully exposed? And how do they come back from such decades of deception and manipulation? And here we leave you with this question. If you were standing in their place, could you forgive the betrayals, or would the cracks be irreparable? The court adjourned for a few minutes, allowing the family to catch their breath, or maybe choke on the enormity of what had been laid bare. Christine positioned herself by the door, back straight, her face one of triumph but drained. Janelle moved in quietly, resting a hand on her arm in silent solidarity. Robyn crouched slumped, babbling quickly to Kody, who only grunted briefly, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on nothing as if doing math in his head. Meri hung back, conflicted, her body stiff as if moving would be like taking sides. In that short respite, it became apparent that this was not merely a battle in the courtroom. It was a war that would determine not only legal results, but the very legacy of their family undefined. And yet, at some level, everyone knew that the most deadly secrets hadn't even been revealed yet. The judge came back, the gavel fell a second time, and the hush lengthened as he was about to call the next witness. But everybody expected whom? Robyn's hand rose hesitantly, her voice trembling but soft. "Your Honor, I have something to say," undefined, and the whole courtroom came to a standstill.